In 1980, English electro icon Gary Numan released his fourth album, Telekon, and from it, the side 2 opener, I'm an Agent. Okay, and that was I'm an Agent by Gary Numan from his 1980 fourth release Telekon. And basically, it started with like this wind-up drone that gave way to a simulated beatbox that sounded like simulated maracas almost. And then that went right into this angular verse vocal melody over a kind of monochordal backdrop in E and with some like waving you know, and swirling synth sounds with quite an arsenal that I'll read off in a bit here. And then that same melody modulated to C during the chorus. And then it went into this double bridge. It was like 8 bars, I believe, of first in B flat, and then like open cadence with these somewhat quiet, kind of windy tones encircling the key. And then it drops to F sharp for kind of a thicker, like 8 bar, 4 bar run. I lost count of that, but that section had like these wavy, luminous synths kind of swirling overhead amid these like coil sheared guitar strings, and then tensing up into some actual chords, and then repeating. Yeah, and lyrically, let's see what this touched upon. Send in ears, thoughts of crashing all those pictures. Send in thoughts of John the God. Send in dreams, lovers on corners. Clean my sheets. Your only chance is break the states. We are clean. Don't ask, I'm an agent. Send in change, secretaries, nothing more. You can be replaced, you know. Send in chance, bad conditions, talk of leaving, talk of walking out on me. Send in you, send in pain, send in lies, send in words that I believe. Send in you, stick on pretty aircraft nose. This is coming at me like fragmentary overload, but I am going to go right to the horse's mouth. What Numan had to say about this during a 1997 interview: disenchantment, disappointment, fear, a whole range of things as your dream becomes reality and yet turns into a partial nightmare at the same time. So it's kind of like the nonsense, fragmentary visuals that you often encounter in a dream. John the God was John Fox, a slightly tongue-in-cheek pointer for the press to consider, in that if they got rid of me, as seemed to be their intent, John Fox is waiting to take my place. Huh. Send in thoughts of John the God. The send in you line is simple. Ever heard the expression being stuck up or having your nose in the air or looking down your nose at someone? The line refers to someone like that. It was an insult. Send in you. Huh. Stuck on pretty was a reference to makeup. Aircraft nose was a reference to being stuck up or arrogant. Nothing much to care about as a reference to a stuck up, caked on makeup, arrogant woman of my acquaintance. So someone he actually knew about. Huh. Maybe it could have been someone on the Blitz scene. Yeah, he had his misgivings about all that. Wrote a song about on the next album, Dance. Anyway, let's go with the next track. I Dream of Wires. Bit of a slow, aquatic, kind of dry, icy intro. Kind of like the fog on top of dry ice, you know. And how deep red light reflects on it. Okay, and that was I Dream of Wires by Gary Numan, the second track on side 2 of his 1980 release, Telekon. And it began with this dry ice, foggy intro, and it's then before settling into this kind of dual tone set of bars in F, like hearing several what I mean by that is hearing a few kind of interweaving electronic sounds there. And then very quickly rising to G for the verse, an open cadence, rhythmless set of bars with Numan singing in this low monotone, flanked with some spiraling electro sounds. Once again, very kind of like luminosity in the dark, kind of like glow in the dark type sounds. Rising to A minor for the bridge chorus. And then a repeat of those steps, only this time, like, the verse is a lot fuller, whole band sound, voluminous, sustained synth tones, it's kind of fuzzy in places, really heavy rhythm section. Ex-Druid drummer Cedric Sharpley giving us some steady beats there. For the third F landing, and swirled with high spiraling electrotones, exploring more of the tonal colors there with each repetition of the different. Basically, we've got like 3 or 4 chords in this, and it's like each section just stays in a key, but it continually builds layers with each visit, you know. And then on the third and final course, I think instead of going to A minor, it went to B flat. Yeah, a half step higher. And then on the final F landing, which took us to the outro, we heard a whistled rendition of the vocal melody. And got to hear some like sumptuous acoustic layers, like getting fleshed out towards the end, and crisper bass. And yeah, I Dream of Wires by Gary Numan. Also recorded that same year by Robert Palmer for his album Clues. And that recording featured Gary Numan as well. And the two versions are very similar musically, the only difference really being the vocals. And Palmer even tries to put on his best Gary Numan for that track, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I Dream of Wires. Let's see what the lyrics were getting at in this one. I am the final silence, the last electrician alive, and they call me the sparkle. I was the best, I work them all. New ways, I dream of wires. We opened doors by thinking, we went to sleep by dialing O. We drove to work by proxy. I plugged my wife in just for show. New ways, I dream of wires. So I press C for comfort. I dream of wires, the old days. New ways. And so this is like some kind of far off time in the future where they're looking back on an age of electronic development that we haven't even arrived at yet here in 2020, 40 years after this was recorded. So this could be like spoken from the point of view, well, of an electrician kind of toward the end of his life, like say maybe like 200 years from now, from today even. And yeah, a guy like an electrician in his 90s looking back upon the electronic innovations, say of 2100 or so, yeah. And a time when even humans were becoming kind of cybernetic thanks to tech developments and such. Yeah, and on Telekon, Gary Numan is credited with, well, in addition to vocals, he plays Minimoog, Polymoog, ARP Pro Soloist, kind of a, I always think of Tony Banks when I hear about that, Roland Jupiter-4, Sequential Circuits Prophet-5, Yamaha CP-30. Yeah, I'm not like an expert on like the different keyboard models, so I wouldn't. If you know where each of the sounds that we heard in these two tracks were coming from, yeah, and you'd like to write up a list like this bridge had this, yeah. Oh, go ahead, be my guest. Roland CR-78, Synare. Let's see, Synare. A series of electronic drums made by Star Instruments in the mid-70s through the 80s. The Synare drum was a drum synthesizer, meaning that it was essentially a synthesizer, but instead of being controlled by a keyboard, it was triggered by hitting rubber pads. Okay, yeah, I've seen those kinds of things. Guitar, piano, mini bass, say. Huh. And so he was quite the multi-instrumentalist at this part. And at this point in his career, Paul Gardiner, bass backing vocals, Cedric Sharpley, drums, percussion backing vocals, Payne, viola, piano, Minimoog, Polymoog backing vocals. This is just such a layered album. Russell Bell, guitars, violin, claves, backing vocals. Denis Haines, Prophet-5 piano, ARP Pro Soloist, Yamaha CP-30 whistle. Ah, so he was the one responsible for that whistling. And John Webb, James Freud, and Simple Minds are credited with hand claps. Thinking some of the other tracks for that. I know there's hand claps. Like I'm thinking like I Die You Die, but that wasn't actually on the UK version of the album. That was on the. I actually think the American copy of the American version of this album is stronger than the UK because. With I Die, You Die at the end of side one makes for just all the more tighter album than Sleep by Windows. But, and this album deservedly reached the #1 position in the UK album charts. And surprisingly made it to number 64 here in the US. And yeah, so he was just kind of at the height of his powers at this point. And I really appreciate, and come to think of it, Duke by Genesis also made it to #1. It was their first #1 album. Yeah, and both those albums are in my top 3 of 1980. Got 2 of my top 3 albums of 1980 made it to #1 in the UK. So UK public taste was just at its peak. Yeah, and the other album I'm thinking of, and the I don't know about the chart position of the Vienna album, but I know that the title track made it to #2. Yeah, by Ultravox. So my top 3, heck, my top 4 albums in 1980 were all commercially successful in the UK. Yeah. So. Definitely would have been the place to have been around that time if I could go back in time. I'd like to visit the UK circa 1980. I didn't manage to go over there until 1994, but that's a whole other story. Yeah. Anyway, Gary Numan, at the height of his power and at the height of his craft in 1980, putting out great music. His 4th album by this point, or technically his 2nd if you really want to consider Two-Way Army and Gary Numan as 2 separate entities. I like to just think of the first 2 albums as Gary Numan and the Two-Way Army. Yeah, highlight him, highlight the star, highlight the front man, the mastermind behind it all. Yeah, and he also did a lot of other stuff too. A lot of B-sides, a lot of sessions, a lot of alternate takes and stuff. Like some of those the Plan sessions from like 78, 79. Some of them were like the songs were like alternate versions of songs that would ultimately make the album. Like it would be like an alternate take on a certain melody, and he would decide, oh, do I like it better this way or that way? Oh, yeah. Anyway, and he would go on making great music for the next few years. I'd say this album, Telekon, and the next one, Dance, were his creative peak. Yeah. Anyway, for more rubies and sapphires from the catalog of Gary Numan, see the directory of albums by American G artists linked in the description below for red hot tracks and purples from, the whole range of English G artists, like from, you know, like Gary Numan to like, oh, Gracious, Gang of Four, Godly and Cream, Genesis, Griffin, yeah, Greenslade, Graham Parker, Gun, The Glove, Gravy Train, The Greatest Show on Earth, Gentle Giant, Girls' School, The Groundhogs, Galliard, Gillen, Gordon Giltrap, The Gods. Yeah, I'm reading them off the GIF as it flies right by me on the G directory right now. Yeah, because I can name a bunch. The Gadgets. Yeah, the first alphabetically on the list. Yeah, Matt Johnson's pre-the Act, post-punk experimental act. Yeah, really good stuff. Anyway. Like and subscribe, follow me on social media, share the video, and leave a comment if there are any observations you have about the two tracks we just heard. The lyrics, which were quite interesting, oblique, and open to interpretation. The layers, the instruments, that whole arsenal of keyboards and such that Gary Numan had. If you can identify each, if you can match each instrument maker model to the different sounds that passed us by, yes, I'd like to hear about that. And until next time, this is Zaragon, the world's most ear travel Tremexmist, signing off.